You're watching the Mr. Quality Guy YouTube channel. Hello everyone, Mr. Quality Guy here, and today we are doing a video on the history of CMMs. Now, it's kind of important to understand that the role that CMMs played in the advancement of quality. So, sit back and relax, and we're going to go through some basic history on CMMs. So when we go through the history of CMMs, we have to understand that CMMs as a whole are a relatively modern concept that start in the early 1940s. But we have to ask the question, what is a CMM? A coordinate measuring machine, CMM, is a device that measures the geometry of physical objects by sensing discrete points on the surface of the object with a probe. Various types of probes are used in CMMs, including mechanical, optical, laser, and white light. Depending on the machine, the probe position may be manually controlled by an operator, or it may be computer controlled. CMMs typically specify a probe's position in terms of its displacement from a reference position in a three-dimensional Cartesian coordinate system, i.e. with x, y, and z axes. In addition to moving the probe along the x, y, and z axis, many machines also allow the probe angle to be controlled to allow measurement of surfaces that would otherwise be unreachable. However, CMMs with a rotary table could have a fourth or even fifth and sixth axis when probe angles and rotary table are introduced. So, CMMs are an incredibly versatile tool that allows us to measure things very exactly, and also repeatability is a huge thing with CMMs. And as we see in the upper left corner, there's a picture of a prototype CMM from the late 1940s, early 1950s. And the concept of being able to measure something easily or quickly is very attractive. So the first part of CMMs is what I'm going to call the analog era. The first CMM was introduced by the Ferranti Company of Scotland in the 1950s as a result of a direct need to measure precision components in their military products. Although this machine only had two axes, the first three-axis model began appearing in the 1960s. DEA of Italy and computer control debuted in the early 1970s, but the first working CMM was developed and put on sale by Brown and Sharp in Melbourne, England. Leitz Germany subsequently produced a fixed machine structure with moving table in the early days of coordinate measurement machines. Mechanical probes were fitted into a special holder on the end of the quill. A very common probe was made by soldering a hard ball to the end of the shaft. This was ideal for measuring a whole range of flat-faced, cylindrical, or spherical surfaces. Other probes were ground to specific shapes, for example a quadrant, to enable measurement of special features. These probes were physically held against the workpiece with the position in space read from a three-axis digital readout, or DRO, or in more advanced systems being logged into a computer by means of a foot switch or similar device. Measurements taken by this contact method were often unreliable as machines were moved by hand and each machine operator applied different amount of pressure on probe or adopted differing techniques for the measurement. As you can see, we have some pictures of some very early CMM use. This is an era that I'm not very familiar with. I grew up in an era where all the CMMs I'd ever used were CNC controlled, and it's just astounding at what technology started with and where we're at today. So then came what I'm going to call the electric era. A further development was the addition of motors for driving each axis. Operators no longer had to physically touch the machine, but could drive each axis using a hand box with joysticks. These are also known as jog boxes. In much the same way as with modern remote-controlled cars, measurement accuracy and precision improved dramatically with the invention of the electronic touch trigger probe. The pioneer of this new probe device was David McMurtry, who subsequently formed what is now Renishaw PLC. Renishaw PLC is probably the #1 supplier of metrology equipment in the world. Although still a contact device, the probe had a spring-loaded steel ball, later ruby, stylus. As the probe touched the surface of the component, the stylus deflected and simultaneously sent the XYZ coordinate information to the computer. Measurement errors caused by individual operators became fewer, and the stage was set for the introduction of CNC operations and the coming of age of CMMs. Renishaw is really one of the biggest companies in metrology. But Renishaw is also a massive innovator, and they continue to innovate in the technology of metrology. Without Renishaw and Mr. McMurtry, we may not have the technology that we have today. That is including, our cars probably would not be as good as they are now. It's amazing what a simple invention can do to change the course of history. Though there were other softwares available, the introduction of PC-DMIS in the early 90s was a huge step in CNC control for CMMs. PC-DMIS is one of the early CMM softwares that allowed us to be able to measure as we are today. PC-DMIS is also one of the oldest that are still available. There are a couple of old ones out there that you may see some use, mainly MeasureMax, but you're going to be hard-pressed to find someone that is going to be able to program in Valmez. Valmez is a really, really old one, and I've only heard of it through working with some older programmers that were programming in the 80s. But the introduction of PC-DMIS was huge for the metrology industry. And as we can see on the pictures to the right, these are examples of what modern CMMs look like. Compared to, it's a night and day difference from a modern CMM to the ones that we saw earlier from the 60s. CNC control in every way has improved the quality that we see today. And it's not just CNC control in CMM machines, it's CNC control in lathes and mills and all sorts of other manufacturing tools that has allowed us to get the quality that we have seen today that would never have been possible in times earlier. When you look at, for example, car warranties, if you told someone that it was possible to buy a car with a 5-year, 100,000-mile warranty in the 1960s, they would have thought you were probably crazy. Car warranties may have been only a year or two in the 60s, if that. There's, Hemi-powered Challengers and Chargers only had like a 90-day warranty on them. If you tried to sell that today, you would be out of your mind. So all of this is possible through advancements in quality equipment, and that's why understanding the history of this is so important. So that's just a quick overview on the history of CMMs. I hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you in the next week. Okay, so that was a video on the history of CMMs. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you want to have more information on CMMs, don't hesitate to comment down below. And thank you all for watching.